Hi, this is Mike Brown, owner of Death Wish Coffee Company. Welcome to Fueled by Deathcast.
I love Jeff, but sweet and high. Whoop, there's so much drama, coffee and pie.
Death Wish Coffee presents Fueled by Deathcast, the world's strongest podcast. With your hosts, the incredible Jeff and the amazing D-Man.
Welcome back, everybody. It is another episode of Fueled by Deathcast, episode 16.
We can drive a car now.
Yeah, we can.
As a podcast. We can't drive now. We're horrible drivers.
That is true. I am the incredible Jeff.
And I am the amazing D-Man.
And we are very happy to be here again. As always, I want to thank the incomparable Brock Powell.
I don't even know what incomparable means.
You cannot compare him to anyone.
Oh, no.
Yes.
He's pretty incomparable.
Yes. He is the voice behind all of our awesome stuff on this podcast. Go on over to brockfox.com and check him out. I want to say another reminder that we are bringing this show on the road. We are giving Fueled by Deathcast live as part of the NYC Podfest this year with special guest comedian Kevin Bartini. And right now, if you go on over to deathwishcoffee.com/deathcast, at the bottom of the page where you find all the podcasts, we're running a contest to win 2 free tickets to our show. And it also includes the live version of the Side Door podcast, which is the Smithsonian Institute podcast, and Broad Wasted, another very funny podcast. So go on over and try to win those tickets if you're in the NYC area, April 9th. And I just want to say... I want to thank the band, the Dropkick Murphys. I had an amazing St. Patrick's Day this year because they love Death Wish Coffee and they wanted us to come out to their show on St. Patrick's Day in Boston.
It sounds like you guys had quite the good time.
We really did, and they do something amazing. They have a charity called the Clatta Fund, and you can go on over to clattafund.org. And they support a lot of really underfunded nonprofit organizations.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so you can go help them out with that.
Awesome. I want to say congratulations to our very first podcast guest, Eddie Fivey, and him and his beautiful wife, Leanne Fivey, had their baby boy recently, Mason. So congratulations to them.
That's awesome.
Secret code unlocked. Discount of death.
All right. This week on this episode, we have a really special guest, DC Comics writer Steve Orlando.
So this week, if you type in The Shadow, which is Steve Orlando's favorite character, which he now gets to write about, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So if you type in THESHADOW, you get 15% off any available mug collection this week only.
Yeah, right on deathwishcoffee.com. Check out in the mug collection, and you'll get 15% off. Just type in The Shadow.
Science!
I'm so ready for it.
All right. Well, it's funny because on a recent episode during our science segment, you actually brought this organism up, but we weren't really talking about it. But this week, new information about tardigrades.
Oh, I love tardigrades.
And you love tardigrades. And for those of you who don't know, tardigrades are also referred to as water bears.
Yeah,
and,
they look like little, they're cute looking,
they're
man.
microscopic organisms that basically can live anywhere.
Yeah, they're crazy. They go into a little shell-like hibernation mode until whatever their environment is in, it becomes habitable.
Right.
Is that a word?
Yes.
Or is it habitable?
Yeah, both.
Okay. Whatever. That. Whenever their environment becomes that, they just come out of their cute little shell and they become little water bears again.
And I have a little bit more information on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They are unfazed by extreme heat, radiation, even being blasted into space. These things will still live. And what they kind of like, what happens to them is they go through a period, a process called desiccation. And what that means is they completely dry up. When they are like in let's say in extreme heat or the outreaches of space where there is no water, the water from all of their cells and everything will just dry up, and they'll become this dormant husk, basically.
That's crazy.
But years or even decades later, they can rehydrate themselves and be alive again, which is crazy. And now we've known about this for a little bit. But scientists now are starting to figure out that they might be making this glass shield to protect their cells. And what that means is they're basically pumping out a very unique type of protein that makes a glass-like material that literally coats the inside of their cells.
So it's like a little glass cocoon.
Right.
Yeah.
But on the cellular level.
Oh, crazy.
And it's even crazy to think about because these things are microscopic themselves.
Yeah.
So this is the coolest part about this new discovery, is that scientists say we might actually be able to borrow this tech, this idea of protective proteins, and use it to improve the tolerance of crops during droughts, and also be able to preserve vaccines without them having to be refrigerated.
Wow. So we're going to start genetically modifying things to be more like tardigrades.
In a sense, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll be able to use their own survival technology to better the human.
So this
the human
might be
race.
a way to transport stuff in space.
Yeah.
Where they won't have to spend so much on like shielding or like have to worry about how much of this food product can we fit into this, mechanism that we're shooting off into space.
Right.
Because we can just dry it up like tardigrades and just shoot it out in space. It'll hit Mars and just add water and poof.
Yeah.
Huh.
It's pretty neat.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah, I love finding little things like that, and it's
I knew
amazing.
tardigrades were special.
It's amazing that something as small as a tardigrade could actually be a game changer for all of humanity.
What fuels you?
So this week we got to talk to comic book writer Steve Orlando, and that is an incredible conversation coming up later in the episode. And one of the things he was talking about was he really enjoys the history of comics. Some of his favorite characters are from the 40s.
Yeah.
And we even talked about a little bit about how he has a great reverence for the character Lois Lane, because she is such a strong woman character who's been around for 75 plus years in comic books.
I love that Steve just finds these super, they're kind of like underground characters, and he wants to give them their due attention. That's pretty cool.
And the thing is they have a lot of history in comics, but also they are the history of comics.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what he was getting at. And that was kind of where I went to with the what fuels you this week, because I feel like the passing of information and the history of any subject only strengthens everyone's knowledge about it, and it also makes it that much more, I don't know, interesting is the word I would go for, but it makes it that much more amazing.
I mean, to me, I think you got to do your research. We're standing on the shoulders of giants.
Yes.
And it's kind of like a universal privilege. But I say privilege in a way is that you have to follow through. You have to do the research. You have to realize that you are standing on the shoulders of giants, and look back at your history of whatever you're doing, or whatever your hobby is, or
Right.
sport, or just figure out how it is where it is now. There had to be generation after generation of people working on this idea that you're working towards.
Yeah.
And that all that information is there. We have the internet now.
Yeah.
I mean, it used to be we have libraries and
Yeah.
encyclopedias, and isn't that a grand thing? But now we have the internet.
Yeah.
It's insane, and information is at our fingertips. So if you're not doing the research, you're just missing out. It's just there. It's so easy to find.
And much like comic books in general, the stories that you find in comic books, writers are very attuned to that, and they'll make stories from, let's say the 60s and 70s kind of coexist in the same ones that they're writing today. So there's all this history that kind of, builds upon itself, and much like in life, you can find that in almost anything. Like, look at music, look at, science, it all, like you said the best, D-Man, like we stand on the shoulders of giants, and you should know who those giants are or what those giants are, and I think that fuels us all to just want to learn more.
I mean, even those giants are standing on the shoulders of titans.
Yeah.
It's just the way it is. It's always been that way, and that's why, I mean, history class in school is so important, but you got to continue that past your schooling. You got to be doing the research, and it's not just your cultural history. It's even, like I said, the history of any sport that you're getting into.
Yeah.
That's just so important.
Yeah, knowledge is power. It's time again for our new favorite segment, the community shout out. This week, Again, before I even start, I just want to say again, we love it when we see all of you guys out there in the community loving this podcast. We're nothing without our listeners. We really aren't. If nobody's listening to this, I guess I'm still having fun with you, D-Man. But
Yeah, I know.
But
we'd be doing this still if nobody was listening.
But we really appreciate every single one of you out there. And I saw this week an incredible, and it warmed my heart, post from one of our community members, Caddy Symington. And this week, the community shout out goes out to you. We've been seeing you actually for a while now, posting about the podcast. You truly enjoy the podcast. You actually talk to other people, So, we can't thank you enough for supporting us and supporting the company and being a fan of what we do.
Yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate you.
Yeah. So this week, D-Man, last week we talked a little bit about coffee tips. And
we even talked about coffee candles before, which is
Yeah.
one way you can take coffee and do anything with it, and it's got so many beneficial properties.
It's the truth. And one of the things that I recently found out is coffee is very good in is when you use it with specific oils and stuff, you can make skin products and face scrubs, and it's actually very rejuvenating because of the caffeine and because of the very specifically coconut oils and those types of oils.
So I saw your wife making some of that.
Yeah. My wife Trisha actually had taken fractionated coconut oil and infused it with Death Wish coffee for over a month.
So have you been putting this on your face?
I haven't tried it yet, but because she just finished this up. It was the month finally came up.
And by face, do you mean mouth hole? Because it seems like the place you should put that.
And she strained it all out.
Wait, it's just coconut oil and
fractionated coconut oil.
Okay.
And then infused with Death Wish coffee for over a month. And now she can make different scrubs and different lotions by using this oil, and the caffeine in it.
It sounds like you could cook with it.
If you used a different type of oil.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to use fractionated coconut oil to
I'm not
cook
even
with
sure
it.
what that means.
It's just it's a different form of the oil, so it would break down a little bit differently in a cooking.
So it's really not meant to eat?
No, not at all. But it is meant to really help your skin. And I just think it's neat that coffee is a product that isn't just the first thing you reach for in the morning. In your cup, it can do a lot of really neat things, or it can be used in various ways,
and we said candles earlier, but we make the chocolate.
Yeah.
There's Rad soap out there.
Yeah.
Takes our coffee and makes a soap out of it. And there's, we make vodka out of it.
Yeah.
There is a beard balm company that not only uses it for a beard balm, they use it they just made a chapstick.
Awesome.
Yeah, so shout out to 1740 Beard Balm.
There it is.
But yeah, you can do so many things. So that's cool. Face. I want some of that. I'm gonna wash my face with that.
Yeah, I'll hook you up. I know a girl.
The Death Wish Death List.
This was a rough week. First of all, we lost Bernard Bernie Wrightson. He was 68. He is a pretty famous American horror artist. He was the co-creator of the character Swamp Thing, along with writer Len Wein. He is completely known for his very intricate pen and ink style. Also his very thick brush work when he would
super intricate too.
When he would do his brush paintings and stuff, and including with that brush stuff, his award-winning adaptation of Frankenstein, which if you guys all need to go see that and check that out. He also co-created the character of Destiny with writer Marv Wolfman, and that is a character that a lot of people might know from a lot of work that Neil Gaiman has done, because he has used that character since. He did art for National Lampoon magazine. He did art for Heavy Metal. He illustrated a lot of Stephen King's work, actually, including The Wolves of the Kala, which is one of your favorite books, I know. He also worked with DC and Marvel characters and drew comics with Jim Starlin. And he even helped develop the look of the Reavers in the movie Firefly Serenity.
Yeah,
which is one of our favorites.
They're freaky, man. He did a good job on that.
So he will be missed. Also, we lost probably maybe the last supervillain in the world, David.
No, not the last.
David Rockefeller. He was 101 years old. He was an American banker. He's obviously the son of John D. Rockefeller Jr., the first ever billionaire in America. He was one of 6 children. He graduated cum laude in Harvard in 1936, and then within the decade, he joined the family-run and owned bank, which was Chase National Bank at the time. But now that's changed a couple times throughout the years, and it is now what we all know today as the J.P. Morgan Chase Bank. He rose the ranks, became chairman of the bank until he retired until 1999, and under his term as CEO, he made Chase a central pillar in world finance with an estimated 50,000 correspondent banks. He was very much of a big proponent of global dominance, which is why people seem to think of him as this evil supervillain sometimes.
I hope somebody writes this like, hey, no, I liked him. I met him one summer and he saved me from being hit by a boat in the water.
There's a Hollywood rumor out there even that the character of Mr. Burns from The Simpsons actually is loosely based on David Rockefeller.
That's crazy.
So, 101 years
that
old.
Makes sense.
And finally, legend has passed. We have lost Chuck Berry this week, 90 years old, the quintessential father of rock and roll. He successfully combined rhythm and blues at a time when that was a brand new idea. He was influenced by the incredible T-Bone Walker and actually was given help to get his first break with Chess Records by Muddy Waters. You know his hits, especially the ones from the 50s and 60s. Maybelline, Roll Over Beethoven, Rock and Roll Music, Johnny Be Good. The list goes on and on. He was among one of the first musicians inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1986, and actually he's releasing his first album posthumously this year, which will be his first album since 1979. And what's really interesting is that his music appears on the golden record on the Voyager 1 spacecraft, which is out in space somewhere because it left our solar system 4 years ago, actually this week. And John Lennon of the Beatles actually once said, if you had to give rock and roll another name, you might call it Chuck Berry.
That's really cool.
Yeah. Death wish you a happy birthday this week, though. Friday, March 24th, The Undertaker.
And he's still at it, man.
Oh, yeah. He's 52, and he's actually going to be one of the main wrestling fights in the brand new WrestleMania 33 that's coming up this year. Happy birthday, Saturday, March 25th, to the incredible Aretha Franklin. She's 75, still going strong, still singing, still hitting all those notes. Sunday, March 26th, the lead singer of Aerosmith. Happy birthday to Steven Tyler, who's going to be 69. And on Monday, March 27th, Captain Mal himself, Nathan Fillion, is going to be 46, and on top of the 1,000 other roles he's played, including Castle and
I think Firefly comes up so much on this podcast.
Firefly. Well, we love Firefly.
Okay, we're bringing it back.
We're bringing Firefly back. You heard it here. It's going to be Fueled by Deathcast presents Firefly. It's going to happen. We're going to take a short break and give you this week's D-Man update with some awesome Death Wish Coffee Company news.
D-Man's Death Wish Update. Brought to you by Death Wish Coffee.
All right, this week, what do we got, D-Man? What do we got?
So, currently, we're finally rolling out. We talked about it before that subscribers would get first dibs on some items.
Oh, that's right. I forgot we brought that up here before.
So if you're listening to me now and you're a subscriber, there might be a thing or two that only you can get right now. So
this is the best time. We've said this a bunch on this podcast. One of the greatest ways to get coffee from deathwishcoffee.com is to be a subscriber. It comes every week, every month. How you can set it up to your specifications, and it's set it and forget it, and then it just shows up.
It's so easy to set up, and even if you have any issues, we have customer service here ready to help you along, and even just sign you up and walk you through the process. So
and you're going to be, this is the perfect time to do it because you're going to get some sweet deals.
Yeah, we got
first.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So if you're not a subscriber yet, like you said, now is the time to do it. If you are a first-time subscriber, we have a special deal going on for you. So hop right on that, and we'll be giving more of these subscription only releases more and more now that we've got the logistics worked out.
That's awesome. I want to remind everybody, this has been running for a couple weeks. We've talked about it incessantly on this podcast because it's so awesome. There's a contest right now on deathwishcoffee.com where you can win an all-expense trip to Vegas via Poker Central. Love them over at Poker Central. And I actually want to shout out, Poker Central has their own podcast network. Go look them up. And they talked a lot about this awesome collaboration that Deathwish Coffee and Poker Central are doing to do this contest. So you can still win.
That's so cool.
It's still there.
Have you ever been to Vegas?
Never. I've flown over it, but
Me
I've
neither.
never been. Yeah. So someday we'll have to take the podcast to
Maybe
Vegas.
we'll win, Jeff.
Yeah, maybe we can't. It's illegal.
Oh, crap. Well, anyways, I've got some really exciting news. Now that we've got things worked out with the cold brew, so we have our box design, we have the people who will make our we bought all the boxes that we need.
Yep. I've seen them in the warehouse.
We know how to can it now. We have the process down. We're just refining it. So now when we have these releases, they're going to be coming now. We're going to be able to do this more and more and easier, and it'll get better. So in a couple of weeks, we're going to start another canning process.
Excellent.
Yeah,
so, can we say tentatively in the next month or two, we're going to be rolling out another batch of Nitro Brew?
In the next month or two that's an easy thing to say.
Excellent.
Yeah, before we had logistics to work out. There's that word again, logistics. It means, well, pretty much you have to figure out how everything's going to work. And we've got it now. So
awesome.
Yeah, we're prepared, and it's a coming.
Awesome. So that's on the horizon. And as always, tune in every week for another update, and we'll give you some more cool news.
Cheers.
We now return to Fueled by Deathcast.
This week, we got the honor to talk to one of our good friends and an amazing comic book writer, Steve Orlando.
Yeah, he's a really cool guy, and we had a great conversation with him here at HQ.
Yeah, we talk about how he broke into the business, because that's always an interesting story.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy hearing how, like, from the ground up how he started. I mean, you see somebody they say about fighters, the fighter's as good as his last fight. And so what I think that means is that you remember people for, like, their short-term things. So you always think that somebody's always been that.
Right.
They've always been this big comic book writer.
Right.
But Steve, just like everybody else, had to start from the bottom and work his way to the top.
Yeah, and to the top it is, because he is the current writer on such titles as Supergirl and the Justice League of America from DC Comics, among many other things. He's so busy, and I was so glad that he took the time out to be able to talk with you and I, D-Man.
Yeah, so mugs up for Steve Orlando.
The Fueled by Death guest.
What's fun about the comic book industry is that everybody has their story of how they kind of, like, broke into it. And I mean, I want to hear, like, where your influences come from, but I also want to hear, like, how you kind of decided to go down this career path.
Well, I've been reading comics since I was, like, real young, like 3 or 4. I couldn't even really read back then, and I would assume. I don't really remember. But I was getting, at flea markets and shit, like old comics, and so it's always been part of my life. And then in the 90s, when I started going to, like, Walden Books, or I could actually leave the house unsupervised, you would see, like, so many of the big in comics events were happening then, like, that in retrospect should have driven me out of comics. Like, Clone Saga was happening. The first Spider-Man book I bought didn't even have Spider-Man in it. It had Scarlet Spider in it. And then even when I went to buying DC books, Superman was made of electricity, and Wonder Woman was her mom, and the Flash had broken legs. And
Sounds
all
like
these
a
things.
mess.
Comics are always a mess.
So, like, I came in, like, I've never been a person that was really worried about change like that, because, I just, by chance, when I came in, everything was totally in flux. And certainly never going to go back to how it was before.
The golden age.
Ben Reilly will be Spider-Man forever. So good thing I bought that. But I knew, like, I've always loved the format. I've always loved the sort of high energy, high drama, high action. And these sort of super expansive, deep worlds. The same reason people love Lord of the Rings or any type of fantasy or sci-fi as well. I mean, I love world building. So, I mean, it's... And I find usually that stuff even more interesting than what normal people like. I'm probably the only person that thinks the Silmarillion is more fun than...
I've known a couple people.
They're probably old. So, but I knew I wanted to get into that, and at the time I was into art and drawing as well, and also my father sold like sports memorabilia, so we would go to shows, and I'm quite bad at sports, so I would always buy non-sports cards there, but. That's also how I met a lot of comics characters because comics trading cards were huge in the 1990s. I've got so many collections of DC cards and Marvel masterpieces, especially the first like Joe Jusko. And actually the whole series done by Greg Hildebrand as well.
Yep.
So like I met all these characters, but I didn't really know what they meant, at the time. And then in the late 90s, when Superman became electric, there was an article in the paper in Syracuse that sort of broke down how it happened and all these things. And that's when I sort of realized, like, oh, people make these things, It was the first time I saw, there's a penciler, there's an inker, there's a writer, there's a letterer, there's colors, there's an editor. And they all sort of come together to make these things. So I sort of had that idea then and wasn't sure what I wanted to do in it, just that I wanted to do it. But as I sort of progressed through high school and started going to conventions and looking at and meeting editors and meeting other creators, I soon realized that writing would probably be where my skills lie, because my art was not necessarily in a place where people would pay money for it. And at the same time, like you can move, like, to me the ideas and not the process were what interested me. Because I wrote an illustrated 100-page book in college, and it was an interesting experience. It's made it easier to write for artists, but at the same time, like, about 30 pages in, I was ready to move on to the next idea, because in my mind it was already complete, and putting it on the page was interesting, but it wasn't necessarily what was most fulfilling to me, because I had already written it. In my mind, it was done.
Right.
And taking 100 days. I mean, and that proves what a commitment art is, and what the differences of your economies of time when you're working in comics. But, I realized that I needed to be able to have a lot of things going and move through different stories at a greater speed, and that's why we sort of stuck with writing. As to how I got in, I mean, it's sort of alluded to, like getting into, I mean, first of all, everybody breaks into, no one breaks in the same way.
Right.
I followed what I would say a relatively traditional path. I started going to conventions when I was like 12 or 13. And as I said, meeting editors, meeting other creators, and showing them my work and getting critiques from them, and, using it to get better. And it took a long time to get to a place where something was publishable. But I, found people who I respect, guys like Steve Siegel and Joe Kelly from Man of Action, who you might know them. They created Ben 10, also Big Hero 6. Oh. And like... I would see them every year, every 6 months at these shows, and show them what I had new. And every time, they would say what I could get better at, and what needed to change to be professional, what needed to change to be publishable. And, with the caveat that once I was there, they would help get it in front of the right people. And so, it's networking, and it's also improving constantly and getting better, and not expecting that you're going to come out of the gate immediately, with this amazing, immaculate story,
Right. Gotta start somewhere.
Well, yeah, and honestly, so you have to draw 1,000 pages before you draw a good one, or whatever they say. And it's the same for us too, even though, like, maybe there's a tendency for writers to be precious about this shit, but you shouldn't be, because it took me 17 years, so there's a lot of stuff that I've done that will never see print. Although some ideas like always work their way in, much like John Peters and his giant spider and Superman. Some things I just stick in my mind, and we'll get out there. But no, I mean, so I did through networking, I got my first thing published in Image Comics in 2008, which was in Outlaw Territory, which was nominated for an Eisner. Mm-hmm. And again, that's from relationships I made. I had self-published a book with this my friend Tyler Nickham, who's online at the time as the Deaf Guy. He's a deaf artist. Mm-hmm. And his work had been seen by the person who was putting together Outlaw Territory, which is an anthology. And he said, okay, I'll do it, but I'd like to work with Steve. And that's the first opportunity sort of came around.
That's cool.
And of course, at the time, I was like, "Oh man, 8 pages in an Image comic, I am in." And that was 4. And then 4 years later, I got my next work. So there you go. At Vertigo, and that was another situation of meeting people, and then progressing to a spot where, when there is an opportunity, they can think of you. I had met Will Dennis, who's an editor at Vertigo, again when I was like 14. He's also from upstate New York, so we met him at Ithacon in Ithaca, and we kept in touch, and we talked a lot. And it wasn't until around 2012 where he was putting together an anthology, because Vertigo was getting back into doing anthologies. And at that point, I had come to a place where my work was maybe something they could pay for and publish. So I did that, and that was a story called Breaching, which is about centaurs in space going through puberty. And
wow, really?
Yeah.
How does that work?
Well, they take like peyote. And when they're tripping, they hallucinate their horse body and their human body in like gladiatorial combat, and that's how they decide what their life is going to be like.
So
depending
it's
on what
like
wins.
a hallucinogenic battle of duality, of inner duality.
If we were half horse, So that was but like the nice thing about that is that story was sufficiently strange that when they offered me another short story in October, like I barely had to pitch for it. It was for this anthology. The series in 2014 was called CMYK, which is the colors in the printing process for comics, and so each of them was based on a different color, and that was the only prompt. Like, do a story based on cyan, do a story based on magenta, or in my case, do a story based on yellow. And so editor emailed me, and getting Breaching approved was like a long process, even though it was only 8 pages. And then when we came around to yellow, I said, I'm thinking about doing a story that's about the end of the world and 1800s Indian painting and also cow's urine. And they were like, all right, you're good to go. So
you're in.
Yeah. So like my brand had already sort of been established, for better or worse, there. And that was around the same time when I was in the office that, thanks to the revamp of Batgirl, the yellow Doc Martens revamp, they were open to revisiting other type of more diverse characters, and when asked what I would maybe do was when I mentioned Midnighter. So
nice.
I pitched that in October 2014. I had done a book called Undertow, which was a 6-issue miniseries at Image, which helped that pitch get through because it showed that I could complete a book on time. Every issue of that shipped on time, and they check things like that.
Yeah.
Right. And be professional with it. So
I'm curious as to the pitch for Midnighter. How did that go for you?
Well, I mean, it was actually, so, you had asked about my influences, and Midnighter was actually very closely related to that, because the original, I've always seen him as sort of, one of the things that we all agreed was interesting about him originally was, him and Apollo did not have real names. Like, those were his names, or those were their names. This changed in the relaunch, but we went back and fixed that. But it made him analogous to me always in my mind to some character like Yojimbo, or some character like the Man with No Name. Because Yojimbo, for people who don't know how he comes to his name, which is like Sanjuro, I think, it's literally what he's looking at when he walks into town. It's like his name's like, when you translate it, it's like 33-year-old blueberry field or something like that.
So
like
Japanese poetic.
Yeah, and it's just like this because he doesn't give his real name. It's just like literally it's whatever's in front of him. And so he's like that. And then obviously the Man with No Name is the Man with No Name. I always saw the sort of aesthetic of Midnighter being that kind of person who could walk into this like Kurosawa-style town and, disrupt things.
That's awesome.
And that was a large part of the pitch. Like he's someone who doesn't have to play by the rules, so he can get dropped into situations and blow them up.
Yeah, which for those who haven't looked into Midnighter, it is pretty ultra violent, and I love it. It's all just like psychotic and bloody.
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do a lot of that. I mean, the first issue, I wanted to be like, people are going to have suppositions about it because he's a gay character. So we wanted to upend that and really just make it, obviously we embraced that very wholeheartedly in the book, but it's also, I think, one of the best action books that DC's published, hands down. And we did that. I mean, we wanted to be that. It's sort of like Anything Goes, 80s and early 90s absurdist type of action that you're talking about. Before in the late 90s and early 2000s when action movies had to sort of self-deprecate.
Yeah.
And, isn't this a little goofy? Well, no, it's goofy because you're admitting it's goofy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, Vin Diesel can have his fall broken by a car in Fast and Furious. It's
Yeah.
only ridiculous because you're saying it is.
Right.
But anyway, I think we sort of set the stage well in that. Issue 1, he kills someone with a T-bone steak,
awesome.
which was an avocado in the original script, actually. But, this is, revisions happen. That scene originally took place at a fruit market, and it was an avocado pit going through someone's brain. But
That's awesome.
But in classic comic situations, that didn't make sense, but a steak, all good.
T-bone steak. We're on for a T-bone steak.
So kind of going from being able to, work with companies like Image and Vertigo and, having some sort of guideline, like when you did CMYK, you're writing a story on Yellow and you pitch it and they kind of like, go run with it. But now after pitching Midnighter, and you did a stellar 12-issue run on that, and now working with a company like DC, you're kind of playing in someone else's sandbox. Is it a different approach as a writer to deal with that now? Because and I'll use this as an example, in that original Midnighter run that you did, the 12-issue run, there was a great sequence where you brought in the character of Nightwing, who is the first Robin, for those of you who don't know, but he's an iconic character in the DC universe and actually was doing a lot of stuff in the universe at that time. So does that hinder your writing? Does that do you have to approach it differently because you're kind of playing with these toys now?
Well, it's hinder. No, it's a challenge certainly, but that's also part of the game. It's
Right.
like how do you build something that can fit into this super complex puzzle that is going on, that is continuity and that is the current story. Not just what's happened before, which is key, at least for me, because I like to build on what's come before. But also, how does it fit into the motions of the 40 other books that are coming out right now?
Right.
But that is a fun challenge, because it is worth it to readers when they realize that everything is connected and everything matters.
Yeah. Some of my favorite stuff is when writers really are attentive on that, and you're reading just a random book and that it's tying back to issues before in another line, and it all makes sense.
Well, and that goes back to, like I said, when I first picked up JLA, all those strange status quos were reflected in Justice League, and there are times, and I like that. It showed that all the books respected each other and all the books mattered. When if Batman was if Batman, was a mech warrior or something in Batman, then he was a mech warrior in Justice League for that time. And I'm sure that, you can see the innovation that when Grant Morrison had to deal with Electric Superman, because he actually ended up coming up with some of the best.
I need Electric Superman explained to me because I have no idea what Electric Superman is.
So
Go for it,
sounds like a
Steve.
sin.
I was going to
though.
say I'll go, but
So
you
it's
go,
it's a great costume. So in the late 90s, there was a crossover. I actually didn't read the lead-in as to how he became blue and made of electricity, but so he burned his powers out. Something catastrophic happened, and
He was, powerless
and his
for, a
Kryptonian
minute, yeah.
powers burnt out, and in the place of them, he became an energy being for 2 years, and his skin was blue, and he could phase through things, and he had electromagnetic powers.
Whoa.
And he had a blue and white costume. It was actually a great design.
Yeah, it sounds like it looks cool, but
Yeah, it looked really cool.
People it. It wasn't classic Superman at all, so there was controversy there.
People
But
were angry.
probably great for the artist, a pain in the ass for the writer.
well, people wanted to do something different, and the thing is, like I was saying, that didn't happen in JLA, but it got bounced to JLA, because you have to reflect what's going on in the other books. Mm-hmm. But then the writer there, Grant Morrison, ended up coming up with what a lot of people say are some of the most iconic Electric Superman moments, even though, at one point, without getting too much into story stuff, at one point, the Earth and the Moon are about to crash into each other, and Superman uses his powers to give the Moon an opposite magnetic charge to the Earth, so they start to repel each other.
Oh, thank God.
Yeah. And things like that. So he, but I think that's a nice moment where you see these working in a shared universe. It is a challenge, But often through those things, you get some of the best moments when you have to work and find solutions to things.
It's like a fun problem to kind of like work out, like when you have to work with those. And speaking on that, DC in this last year has just went through another change which they branded as their Rebirth. And it's actually the name of all of their titles now. And Steve, you're currently writing 2 of those titles. You're writing the brand new Supergirl and also Justice League of America, JLA. Are you dealing with a lot of even more of these fun problems, as I'll call them, writing a book like Justice League of America, because now not only are you dealing with these same characters, you're dealing with all of their actual lines too, because Justice League is Batman and all these other characters. So is that kind of what you're dealing with? Like, is this even more of a playground for ideas because you have all of these iconic characters, like storylines happening at the same time, kind of thing?
Yeah, certainly, and it's nice to have things reflected. Again, like, you know, it's a little bit of both, honestly, in JLA, because half of JLA are these characters that are appearing elsewhere, like Batman and Black Canary, and then another part of it is giving a little bit of a spotlight to characters that don't have their own books and maybe need a little more visibility. People like Vixen, people like the Atom.
Yep.
It's kind of like having an opening band with a really big other group.
Yeah.
You know, you just got to get them in the limelight, and then they'll shine.
And so... But there's a lot of that, and it's exciting because I mean, things that you've already seen will pay off, not just in JLA, but across the DC universe as a whole, and we are part of this. We have our own story, which is going to get bigger and bigger, and end somewhere really cool. And at the same time, we're part of this greater story that you've seen, you know, in like Detective Comics 950. You see before he's killed, Tim Drake sort of calls out Batman that he's building all of these different armies, and you know, clearly something is going on. Like, we're all going somewhere, and it's nice to be able to have a book that can push towards that and carry the flag to that, or pick up the baton for a little while. And at the same time, like, yeah, it is nice to have characters like Lobo and characters like again, like Vixen, where you can sort of be the standard bearer to push their stories along, because they haven't shown up in a lot of other places recently, at least.
I love that Lobo is back. Lobo is one of my favorite auxiliary characters of the DC universe because he's
Wolverine in DC.
Yeah, hold the phone. Wolverine isn't shit compared to Lobo. Lobo.
Yeah,
Sorry.
there you go.
So let's not.
I was
don't
talking.
bring Marvel into
I was
this.
talking in Jeff's standards, and I know Jeff's highest standard is Wolverine.
Well, and on the Marvel side, but I really do. I do enjoy the character.
I just want to point out. Okay, Lobo can punch out Superman.
Yes, he can.
Plus Wolverine.
Yeah, but Jeff doesn't have a Lobo T-shirt.
That's true.
He certainly has like 10 Wolverine shirts.
That's right. I gotta get a Lobo T-shirt. But it's fun to see you be able to deal with those characters. Is it I don't know how to word this, but is it kind of still this new feeling that now you are working on these iconic characters as well, though? Like, you get to write what Batman does? Does that, like...
Yeah, I mean, that's... I mean, it's always pretty strange.
Right? Like...
And also, like, it kind of should be, like... Or you sort of, I think you lose perspective a little bit. Like, you know, I mean, look, it is work. Like, let's just be clear, but at the same time, like, it is a job that not many people have, so you are lucky to have it at the same time, even if you worked for it like a long time in many cases. You know, just like any type of, I mean, like, you know, if you're a professional athlete, like you work for it, but it's also a privilege.
It's amazing that you're there, and you should be grateful that you're there, but you definitely worked your ass off to get there. Yeah. It's a weird dichotomy for sure.
Yeah. And you know, you like just to touch on that, Dustin, like you said, like, you have been working your ass off for years now, Steve, breaking into this business, doing all these books, and like you said earlier on, like, even in the beginning of your career, you had a book published, and then it was 4 years before you had another book published. So, you know, obviously, as with any career like this, there are ebbs and flows. What it keeps you passionate about it? What fuels you to keep coming and putting pen to paper and keep going out there and creating these stories?
I mean, you know, all these characters have something to say, and what they mean. You know, if the core of a character doesn't change, but how it reflects in what's going on in the world and what's going on within these greater storylines is always changing. So there's always something new to say with these characters, or your own characters. You know, I mean, like you. Hopefully you never run out of stories. You know,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like again, like. There's so working in DC or working at Marvel, if I was there too, like there is such a rich depth. You know, they have a deep bench, even if sometimes we don't think it. Mm-hmm. It only takes the right person to bring a character back and show them why they're more relevant than ever. So, I suppose at some point my laundry list of things that I would love to do might end, but there's so many things that I think people need to see and be reminded why they're relevant and why they're interesting. That we haven't even scratched the surface. I mean, JLA is a great book for that.
Right.
I hope I'll be on that as long as people want me on it, because that's the showcase. That's the legitimacy of a character when they appear with the Justice League, that maybe they need eyes on them again. So there's a lot I would love to do, more than I could even list right now when it comes to DC. And in relation to my own creator-owned work, I mean, I do so little of it right now that it is a great opportunity for me. Like I have another book coming out this year that'll be creator-owned, so I only do like one a year or maybe less. We'll see.
Yeah.
So at that point, like a year or two has passed in between, and I certainly have an opinion about something.
Right.
Let's be real. I have an opinion once an hour. So, so there's always something new to say, and then hopefully a new way to say it as well.
That's awesome. You had such a great year this past year too. You also were involved in the highly celebrated Love is Love book, correct? Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk a little bit about like how that came together? Because I mean, like that's just in my mind the way that the comic industry can be that much of a higher echelon of something too, not just telling people in capes running around, kind of thing.
I mean, it came together honestly. Mark had reached out to me, Mark and Draco, that was editing it and putting it together, and it was funny because like so many of the people in it that were at DC, this is before it was a team up between IDW and DC. We all sort of like talking amongst ourselves, like, oh, can we sneak this in and have them, because we're all exclusive,
Right,
so we're all just
right.
like, oh, like how can we be part of this? I'm talking to James Tynan, like, what if we just do it and they don't know, and all these things. But finally, so many of us had asked for a carve out that they were just like, okay, you can all go do it, and then later on, obviously they co-published, so it didn't really matter. But it was, it was an opportunity for me to obviously contribute and hopefully bring whatever small amount of publicity my name puts on that and the cause. But also to show people, again, like to put at the front, artists and people that haven't been seen before. I worked with my friend Ian from Scotland, and who drew it, who has, I think, a really cool style that is totally unlike anything else in comics right now. So he's always looking. I always try to have more people see his work. And then it was colored by Harry Saxon, who's a trans creator. And it was just an opportunity to put new people in front of a wide audience as well, and again show a diverse group of people supporting this cause.
Yeah.
An honor to be part of at the same time. I remember after 9/11, Marvel's Heroes book, that they rushed solicited, and I still have that.
I do too.
So, and I still remember things from that.
Yeah.
The good looks and the bad, by the way. There's, I still remember. Well, anyway.
Now I'm curious.
I also remember Dr. Doom and Magneto crying in Spider-Man, which was something else.
Something else.
Like together or separately? Oh man,
Yeah,
really? Like,
yeah.
like comforting each other.
Yeah.
But I didn't do that, so that's
No.
fine.
but getting back to that though, it is great that something like Love is Love could come out, and you do what you can to help that cause and everybody that was involved with that. I also wanted to just kind of bookend this by congratulating you too. You're up for a GLAAD Award this year, I believe, correct?
For Midnighter and Apollo.
For Midnighter and Apollo, and and that's just again a way of thanking people in this industry for having a voice and not, again, like I said, just making Batman jump off a rooftop. You know what I mean?
Well,
Like,
people like swinging. Like the number one advice that I get from other creators is like, if you don't know how to start the book, people fucking love when Batman swings. And I'm just like, okay.
I love that.
That is real advice that I've gotten.
That's so good.
Also crashing through glass windows.
Yes.
Yep.
Always a good panel right there.
Now you know when he does that. I clearly had no idea what to do in that.
Look, Steve's got Batman swinging through 6 panels in this book. He didn't have anything to say. That's awesome. You touched upon a little bit about how, you get to work on a book like Justice League of America, and so you get the chance to, highlight characters that might not have that highlight. If you had the keys to the castle, you were running DC, or Marvel, wherever you are, like, are there characters out there that I'm just saying, you could, if you were able to just wake up tomorrow and be like, I am a billionaire and I'm going to publish this character and no one's going to tell me no.
No limits.
Yeah, no limits. Is there like your dream character out there that you want to just either bring back or you would just love to write? You would like.
I'm
sure there's
numerous,
a ton. Yes.
At DC, I've always my favorite character is Martian Manhunter, so I would always love to work on him and have him last.
Yeah.
Going further down the line, which I can always do. I love Dr. Fate. I love Miss Liberty. I love the Wesley Dodds Sandman.
Yeah.
Like Sandman Mystery Theater. It's one of my favorite books from the late '80s, early '90s. In general, I've always wanted to bring back and have people like notice Miss Fury, who you may or may not know.
Yeah.
Is she related to?
It's not Nick Fury's wife.
No, but not by me. Like this is like you were talking about books I would want to foster. Like Miss Fury should be a historical character. She's the one of if not the first female superheroes created by a female creator whose name was Tarpey Mills in like the 30s and 40s. And she's public domain now, so I would like one of the. I still like want to find like a high profile creative team of women that could work on her and bring her back. Like that's not a book that I think is right for me to do, but I want it to exist and I want it to be great because that character should be on a pedestal. It's one of the first of its kind.
What is it that really drives you towards that character?
It's the sense of history. Like I want us to understand our history,
That's cool.
like and celebrate things that people too often forget in comics. I would love that. I also have like a strange obsession with the Lev Gleason version of Daredevil, who's the guy that has the split red and blue costume.
Yeah. Huh.
I also really love the Golden Age Red Tornado, who I think is like a perfect young adult character who you may or may not know. She's like a working single mom whose costume is like made of sweatpants, and then she wears her helmet is like her actual.
Sounds like my mom.
Yeah, her helmet is her actual sauce pot that she uses to cook for her family, and she puts on her head, and so she just cleans up her local neighborhood in the 40s. And like it is absurd at the same time. Like,
what's her superpower?
Doesn't have a superpower.
No,
she's a tough middle-aged woman.
Very motivated.
But I just like the style on it in the 40s was very different from other books, and I just think that like that character is such a strong character. And even I say YA because there is something a little absurd about someone running around in like pajama pants and a sauce pot, but there's also something very real, about she takes care of her kids and she does everything, and then also she has time to go out and clean up her neighborhood. It's a small scale thing, but it's also I think very important.
But does she have any time for love?
When she showed up in JSA at the age of like 80,000, she.
Wait, she doesn't age? Is that one of her powers?
No. She does age.
She mega ages.
She was still single. I think she had a husband in between. But I don't know.
I just want to give her a hug.
I'm gonna show you what she looks like too, and it's gonna be really exciting. But I think that book should exist. I think
How long did it exist for? When did it exist?
In the 40s.
It was in the 40s.
Yeah,
I thought it just took place in the 40s.
She was Red Tornado before the android was.
Yeah. She was like way back. Yeah.
And also like it was like a very body positive character. You can see here that she was somewhat robust.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Is where you're at in your career right now? Is there a way where you can actually take some of these ideas and actually try to pitch them? Like you had talked about how you pitched Midnighter to DC and they ran with it. Like, do you ever think about, any of these offshoot characters that you would love to bring back? Do you ever think about actually pitching those out?
Yeah, I mean, all the time, and like some of these are things that I think should happen that I don't necessarily think I should write. And that's the thing. Like, I think there should be a Lois Lane book, for example. And there are plenty of people that are much more qualified to write that than me. But I think that Lois Lane is a character that no other comic company has. You can't manufacture a strong woman character that's been around for 75 plus years.
Yeah.
I want that book to exist. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, like it's all about. I hope I get to many of them.
Yeah.
I think that. Like the Young Animal line is a great opportunity for things like this because they're, you can get a little stranger with your reinterpretations and you can be a little less mainstream with your art style. I mean, they have, they just announced a Forager book, which is like right on my wavelength of things that I would like to do by the Allreds. It's called Bug.
Cool.
So, yeah, I mean, absolutely.
That's cool.
I want, it's all about positioning and having the right amount of time.
At the time, definitely.
There was a JLA JSA crossover in Grant Morrison's JLA, which was awesome to me when I was younger. That centered around like Johnny Thunder and things like that. So yeah, I love to pull the opportunity to pull things back and just have these sort of wild stories that enrich DC's past. I hope that the goal with me with these things is not ever to like make people feel excluded from continuity. I want them to feel like I did when I got in, which is to say, like if you pick up a book, everything you need to know to understand the characters there, but there's also that extra research that you can do to find out more about them. I think people are afraid of continuity many times, like I couldn't. And this is a real thing, by the way, because I talk to retailers and they say, oh, well, you shouldn't, we don't like when books go past 60 issues because at that point readers just will, they will not pick, you don't have new readers after that. But I hopefully, like when you pick up JLA and you pick up these books, which I usually have a fair amount of Easter eggs in my books, it's understandable there. And then also there's that thing, like if you want to put them into Google, if you want to look them up, there's all these other things you can find out. There's like a secret history to explore.
Right.
And that's, hopefully, I want people to be rewarded by that.
That's awesome.
That's how it should work.
Yeah.
Rather than like, what is going on? Like,
right.
I don't understand what's happening.
That's awesome. That's exactly what I love about comics too. And just to speak on it, then we talked about how this year you are the current writer of Supergirl and of Justice League of America. I know that you are constantly busy, and there are many projects, obviously, that we cannot talk about. But is there anything that's coming up in the near future that we can talk about that you can make listeners aware of?
Yeah, I mean, so the most exciting thing is Batman in the Shadow.
Yeah, dude, so cool.
The Shadow is my favorite character in all of comics.
Really? That's awesome. Really, so you get to write your favorite character. That's incredible.
I have a signed movie poster from Alec Baldwin's Shadow movie.
Really? That's awesome.
In my childhood home, I'm probably the only person that has ever asked him to sign anything Shadow related.
That's awesome.
I love that movie.
It's really good until it's not. But at the same time, like there are scenes in that I think are really, really great.
Yeah.
And it's directed by the director of Highlander, by the way, which is kind of surprising to people. Anyway, so I couldn't be more excited about that. I'm doing some plotting work with Scott Snyder on it.
Cool.
Riley Rossmo, who worked with me on Night of the Monster Men, is drawing it, and it's hands down the best work that he's ever done.
Awesome.
We have, as people have now seen, with the cover to issue 2, the story that Riley and I did in Batman Annual is actually related to Batman in the Shadow.
Oh, cool.
Which introduces one of the villains from the arc.
Now, is that going to be a miniseries or an ongoing?
It is a miniseries, so it's 6 issues starting in April. And I just it is, every time I get new stuff from Riley on it, like we're doing just like some of the crazy stuff that he's tried. But it's really, really fun. And it's, the thing about it is they're also such a fascinating pairing, without getting digressing too much into it. When I was talking to Riley about it and talking to Scott about it, you have this eternal opposition between Batman and the Shadow, because at least in our book, Batman is the world's greatest detective, and at the end of the day, he's the person that needs to know everything.
Right.
And the challenge that the Shadow faces is it's the only time that he's come up against someone who is truly unknowable, and it's almost like he's never had to accept that before. So it's the world's greatest detective and the world's greatest mystery, and this sort of moment of mortality for Bruce, which Scott has touched on, by the way, in his run, and Tom King has touched on in his run, with this idea that going along with being mortal and being human is that there are some things that he just won't understand.
Right.
There are some things that are bigger than our world, and that's sort of what the Shadow represents, that sort of truly unknowable thing that is just outside our point of view, and it's hard for him.
Cool.
It's hard for him.
Yeah.
Because he's never had to deal with things like that before. So and coming with that, is the fact that said, there are things that make Batman that mean that the Shadow couldn't get out of that story alive without him. So they truly need each other. But at the same time, like, I love having these true elements of mystery in the story that are pervasive in a way that you don't often see in a Batman story, because usually he's always ahead of the ball, and he still is within his sphere of influence. But then you see, like, maybe there's been puppeteers, that he hasn't even seen for his whole life, because he can still only see on his plane of vision. But the Shadow is from a world, totally outside our own.
Yeah,
very much like it's gonna be really cool.
That's gonna be a
So
lot of fun.
if people want to follow you on your journey of writing comic books and everything Steve Orlando, what's the best way to do that? Where can they find you?
The best thing is, I put my solicits and sometimes other things up on thesteveorlando.com. And then also I'm, pretty active on Twitter at @thesteveorlando. Those are the two best ways. There is a Facebook page, I think, as well, but I just started figuring out how to do the like writer or artist page. So that's pretty new, and I'm still figuring that out. You'll find that I'm not the most social media person.
Yeah.
But I am on Twitter a lot, and like I said, everything that you need to know will always be up. I always put my solicits and news up on my website as well. So
Awesome, man. I can't wait to hear all the awesome things to come from your camp, man.
Oh, thank
Very
you.
excited.
Yeah, thanks a lot for taking time to talk to us.
yeah, absolutely.
This has been Fueled by Deathcast, a Death Wish Coffee Company podcast production. Thanks for listening.